Welcome into this week's Weather Extra. Thanks for joining us. I'm meteorologist Jillian Johnson. California was hit with an astounding 31 atmospheric river events from October through the end of March last year, and have already been slammed with 2 more so far this year. We kick off Weather Extra today by taking a closer look at these powerful storm systems. Senior national and environmental correspondent Ben Tracy joined an airborne research mission with hurricane hunters who are now doubling as atmospheric river runners, and explains more on how these extreme weather events unfold.
Fuel boost pumps. Engine start master.
We're taking off from Honolulu, Hawaii.
That's the best view I've ever had of that.
On a plane filled with U.S. government scientists.
We're kind of almost in the thick of things here.
They often use this jet to hunt hurricanes.
And you can kind of see a lot of heavy precipitation on the radar here.
But today, they're looking for something else.
So instead of a hurricane, we're flying into an atmospheric river?
That's right.
Yep. Yeah, the mission profile is fairly similar to the hurricane missions, but the makeup of the storms are a lot different.
Atmospheric rivers that form over the Pacific Ocean often hit the West Coast, dumping extreme amounts of rain and snow and fueling storms that can travel across the country. An onslaught of atmospheric rivers pummeled California last winter, eradicating the state's drought but causing $4.6 billion in damages.
If we get too much, it's a problem. If we get too little, it's a problem.
Marty Ralph is director of the Center for Western Weather and Water Extremes at UC San Diego. He's been studying atmospheric rivers for more than 2 decades.
What exactly is an atmospheric river?
An atmospheric river is really a river in the sky, but it's a river of water vapor pushed by the wind.
Atmospheric rivers can measure 500 miles across and stretch 2,000 miles long. They can carry about as much water as 25 Mississippi rivers and are expected to become stronger as climate change heats the planet because a warmer atmosphere holds more moisture.
The climate models are projecting that there's going to be longer dry spells, but also the wettest of the wet days, the top 1% wettest days, could be a lot wetter.
So the extremes are getting more extreme.
Exactly.
And really sun now.
During this 7-hour reconnaissance mission, scientists from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration dropped 30 of these instruments with little parachutes into the storm.
And that's giving us constant temperature, relative humidity, wind speed, wind direction, all the way down. It takes about 15 minutes for it to travel that distance.
It's invaluable information from inside an atmospheric river they can't get from a satellite image.
And that's really helpful for forecasters down on the ground to be able to forecast exactly where this is going to go.
NOAA says data from flights like these has already improved the accuracy of forecasts by 10%, better pinpointing where and when storms will hit and how much rain and snow they will drop. That can save lives and protect property. It also gives reservoir operators better data to decide when to release water to make room for an upcoming storm or hold on to it for the dry season.
Exactly. It gives people better awareness of what might be coming.
Marty Ralph says the term atmospheric river was only formally defined by scientists in 2017. And there's still a lot to learn about these rivers in the sky that appear to hide in plain sight.
They sort of don't look like much, even when you're flying right over them at 41,000 feet.
Just kind of looks like a cloudy day out there.
Yeah, but there's a lot going on down there.
Residents of California have been cleaning up the mess as multiple days of record-breaking rain dumped across the state last week. Hundreds of mudslides were reported along with life-threatening flash flooding. Here's a look back at the destruction. Around 30 million people were under flood watches from Southern California into parts of Nevada and Arizona last week as a powerful storm system in the Pacific pushed through the West Coast. The state of California was put under a state of emergency as nearly a dozen people died due to the severe weather, including 5 Marines who had been killed in a helicopter crash during the storm. Floodwaters rose, hundreds of landslides and mudslides were reported along with falling trees across the state as the storm barreled through. Nearly 1 million residents were left without power all over the Golden State. But Southern California felt the brunt of the storm, including the Los Angeles area. Relentless rain caused catastrophic flooding, which resulted in billions of dollars of damage. Between Sunday and Monday, the city of Los Angeles received more than 7 inches of rain, making that the third highest 2-day rainfall total on record record. The city typically averages only 14.25 inches in an entire year and receive half of that in less than 48 hours. Here's a look at the raging river in LA this past Tuesday. The atmospheric river also drenched other parts of Southern California too. Parts of the Santa Monica and San Gabriel Mountains topped over a foot of snow in under 2 days. California residents were urged to stay off the roads and not travel due to the storm's effects. But first responders ended up working tirelessly anyway, conducting several swift water rescues after vehicles attempted to drive across flooded roadways but ended up getting stuck. Over 300 mudslides were reported across the state too, and the danger for more remained in the coming days even after the rain ended. The atmospheric river event overloaded the ground with water, which ended up giving way, sending mud and debris crashing into many homes, and at the same time knocking down trees and power lines everywhere, and also covered neighborhoods and roads with a muddy sludge. Now, this surge in moisture not only caused mudslides, but also caused the erosion of some coastal communities in California. The record rainfall led to evacuations in Santa Barbara County after erosion on a bluff caused the building's deck to crack and fall. This powerful storm system also packed a strong punch with winds. In Northern California, wind gusts reached between 60 to 70 miles per hour in the inland valleys, but across the higher elevations, wind gusts were much stronger, reaching Category 5 hurricane strength. A wind gust of 162 miles per hour was recorded on Ward Mountain in Lake Tahoe. Also across the higher elevations of the Golden State, winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings were in place as large amounts of snow fell across the Sierra Mountains. In fact, before this event, the yearly snowpack was only at 20%, but rose up to above 70% after the storm. Mammoth Mountain received nearly 40 inches of snow in just a few days. This storm system would race east and impacted the Las Vegas area, where preparations were underway for Super Bowl 58. Harry Reid International Airport had a daily rainfall record break after 0.37 inches of rain fell this past Monday. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but Las Vegas typically only sees a little over 4 inches annually. It nearly saw a quarter of that this past week alone. Besides the devastating atmospheric river event last week, here's a look at the other top weather stories we've been following across the globe. Wildfires have been raging through Chile and are believed to be the country's deadliest on record. The fires have claimed over 120 lives, with hundreds still missing. Chile's president said the fires are the biggest tragedy since the 8.8 magnitude earthquake that killed hundreds back in 2010. Central and northern Chile have seen thousands of homes and buildings turned into ash, with nearly 130,000 acres burned. Over the past few years, the country has seen a dramatic increase in wildfire activity due to extreme heat and worsening drought. A total of 1.7 million hectaacres have burned over the last decade. And speaking of heat, the country also recorded its third highest temperature in more than a century, reaching 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit back on January 31st. And take a look at this. Heavy snow pummeled coastal areas of Nova Scotia, Canada last week. Cars and buildings were covered in numerous feet of snow during the historic snow event. Widespread snow totals well over a foot were reported across the province, with some locations seeing 40 to 60 inches accumulate. A state of emergency was declared as heavy snow left many residents trapped inside their homes for days, with some seeing their roofs collapse due to the weight of the snow. Coming up next on Weather Extra, we head to Vegas, where Super Bowl 58 could make history for going green. We have more on this on the other side of this break. Happy Super Bowl weekend, everyone, and welcome back to Weather Extra. Super Bowl 58 could make history this year by going green, and we're not talking about the field. According to the host in Vegas, Sunday's game at Allegiant Stadium will be the first Super Bowl powered entirely by renewable energy. Ben Tracy tracked down the source of that energy in a desolate patch of Nevada desert. Take a look.
Yes, we've got 621,000 panels that make up this array.
This solar farm outside of Las Vegas may look like a shimmering mirage, but its starting lineup is more powerful than any in the NFL.
This solar field right here would be big enough to serve close to 60,000 of our residential customers.
Or a couple homes in one big stadium.
And one big stadium.
That stadium is Allegiant Field, home to Super Bowl 58. The Raiders say it's the first NFL stadium powered by 100% renewable energy, thanks to a 25-year agreement to buy power from this new solar installation owned by NV Energy. Doug Cannon is its CEO.
How much energy does it take to power Super Bowl Sunday?
Yeah, so it'll be over 10 megawatts. That's about equivalent to 46,000 homes.
Sustainability was front of mind as the stadium was being constructed.
Raiders president Sandra Douglas Morgan says the stadium roof is made of a sustainable plastic material that allows in about 10% of daylight but blocks all solar heat, so it takes less energy to cool the building. The grass field is moved outdoors on a rail system to get natural sunlight rather than using energy-intensive growing lights. And everything from grass clippings to food scraps and cigarette butts are composted or converted into other forms of energy.
When you come to a game, you may be thinking about just focusing on the game, but when they hear that and know that we're being conscious of our environmental footprint, hopefully that guest will leave and have that same mindset when they go back home.
This is our main electrical entry room.
The stadium got a pre-Super Bowl visit from U.S. Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm.
The fact that renewable power can power a facility like this should speak volumes about what can happen in other communities.
These white boxes at the solar farm house massive batteries that store renewable energy. So when the sun isn't shining, they still have 5 hours of power.
It's one thing to power a Super Bowl, but do you have enough power for Usher?
Absolutely, we have enough power for Usher.
The short answer would just be yeah.
While the moves on the stage and field will be memorable, this Super Bowl will also make history for its superpower. I'm Ben Tracy in Las Vegas.
Besides the Super Bowl and Las Vegas Strip, there's another attraction hundreds of thousands will want to see as they're in Sin City over the weekend. I'm sure you've seen it on social media, but an eye-popping new landmark has changed the skyline of Vegas. And CBS's Ben Tracy joins us again with an Oscar-nominated filmmaker who made A Postcard from the Earth, a special movie playing in the Sphere. Here's a look inside the revolutionary venue.
You come from a place called Earth.
When you build a $2 billion dome that doubles as a remarkable replica of planet Earth,
a magnificent symphony frozen in time,
it's only fitting that its debut film is a love letter to it.
Every time you come, we see new things all the time.
Director Darren Aronofsky gave us a preview of his Postcard from Earth. It's sci-fi fantasy meets nature documentary. The footage, shot on all 7 continents, is simply stunning.
Each grander than the last.
Brought to life on the largest and highest resolution LED screen in the world.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm in this opera house.
It stretches across 160,000 square feet, making IMAX look like an iPhone.
I just don't know where to look. It's so huge.
You forget you're even watching a movie. Immersive experience rattles your seat.
You feel the wind.
And air pumped into the theater blows by your face.
What is it like for you as a filmmaker to paint on a canvas that big?
Once you see the size of this thing, 4 football fields in size, it's an amazing feeling to watch it. It's hard to work with because the camera sees everything. So you have to kind of come up with shots that really are about everything.
They also had to come up with a camera big enough to shoot it, named Big Sky. It was moved all around the world and even mounted to a helicopter to capture certain scenes.
People will see things and see nature in a way they've never experienced before. But how do we make it emotional? How do we give it a story?
We pushed further and wider and higher.
That story is largely about how humans came to dominate and then destroy our planet.
That we destroyed what we had loved.
It doesn't explicitly mention climate change, but humans board rocket ships to give Earth time to heal.
we left of our own accord. We turned off the lights.
Are you advocating we become a multiplanetary species, or are you saying let's figure out this planet Earth thing before we have to do that?
I think it's both of those things. Of course, the first priority is to try to take care of our home, but it can maybe paint some possibilities of how we get out of this mess.
The only person standing in your way is you.
The Oscar-nominated director of such films as Black Swan, The Wrestler, and The Whale is no stranger to sometimes complex subject matter.
I'm curious how this is going to land with the audience here in Vegas.
Yeah.
Because you're probably going to have some folks in there with oversized beers, people who are taking a break from the crap stable.
Right.
This is kind of deep.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it works on many levels. I'm confident people are going to have a very good experience. If they don't like my movie, the tech in this building is incredible, and the screen itself is unbelievable. Look at the details on the signs. That you can read them. You can read them.
Aronofsky is excited to see what future filmmakers do with this space, and he hopes his film inspires us to remain as in awe of our actual planet as we are by the version we've created.
I think it's very important not to sort of lean into the despair that's out there, but to actually look for solutions. I think the human race is moving towards a solution, and hopefully we'll do it quick enough.
Remember, Earth.
I'm Ben Tracy in Las Vegas.
Straight ahead on Weather Extra is this week's Degrees of Science with Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Weather Extra. 6.5 years ago, Hurricane Harvey brought catastrophic flooding to the Houston area. And this week's Degrees of Science, Brady talked with a longtime Texas meteorologist about what it was like to work through that historic storm.
I'm sure you've covered a lot of crazy weather, but the one people probably know most of is when Hurricane Harvey hit Houston. So in meteorology, we can get days on days of crazy weather. Just behind the scenes, what was it like covering that massive storm and the impact that happened?
Well, it wasn't my first hurricane, and it wasn't my first flood, but it was certainly the first of many other things. I remember the days leading up to it that, the forecast models putting out this tremendous amount of rain. And even before the WPC, the Weather Prediction Center, kind of put out their flood advisory on it, I had this little trick that worked for me almost 99% of the time when I was forecasting the weather here in Houston. The models very seldom got the true nature of our tropical downpours. And so if the raw model data was showing 3 inches, I would always double the amount. So if it was showing 3 inches, I would say on air we have 3 to 6. Most of us will get 3, some will get 6. And that worked about 99% of the time. Well, the raw model data was showing first 12 inches, which would have been 12 to 24, and then it was showing 15, and then 20 and 25. And I remember thinking, there's no way I can go on the air and say we're going to get 25 to 50 inches of rain. And furthermore, if we did get that much, what does that mean? What will happen? And so that was the uncertainty. Is the data correct? Are we really going to get that much? And by the way, we got 56 here in the Houston area, 63 over in Nederland, closer to Beaumont. But then the impacts of that, how do you describe that to viewers, except to say that we could get a lot of rain everywhere, which is, I think, is kind of the message we ended up putting out there. But the second thing is, I remember, watching the video and seeing the look of desperation on people's faces, especially that first night when we started to get that first wave of rain. And we were getting pictures of people in their attics, looking down through their attic access and looking at the water that was several feet in their home. And we immediately got information that the Harris County Flood Control District was watching our coverage, and they sent us a message through NWS chat saying, tell people not to go in their attics because they may get stuck there. And I remember, going on the air saying, don't go in your attic. Harris County Flood Control recommends that if you have to evacuate your house, get on the roof. It's pouring down rain. We've got flash flood warnings and tornado warnings going into effect. And I thought, that's just absurd advice, but that's what we got to pass along. We don't want people to get stuck in their attics. And the third thing I'll remember from that is, again, getting back to the looks of desperation. At one point, I took my mic off and went to the bathroom, got some coffee and sugar loaded, and just kind of stood in the back of the studio, kind of watching our coverage a little bit. And we were getting these flash flood warnings and tornado warnings. And as you know, here in Texas, we don't have basements. So the advice with a tornado warning is go to the lowest level. Well, the advice for a flash flood is to go to the highest level. So it's like we're giving mixed messages here, and we're still hitting the data strong and, pushing out lots of numbers. And I remember walking over to the weather team saying, okay, we just need to be the calm in the storm right now. We need to help people get through this night because they are terrified. And so we need to tone down the rhetoric just a little bit here, give them the information they need, but let's let's have more empathy in our delivery, and that's what I encourage my clients to do today is have empathy and put yourself in your viewer's shoes every time.
You can hear Brady Taylor and Tim Heller's full conversation about the career broadcast meteorology by scanning the QR code on your screen to watch on YouTube, or you can go to KWTX.com/degrees of science. We'll be right back. It may be hard to believe, but hurricane season is starting in less than 4 months, and a new study suggests adding a Category 6 to the Saffir-Simpson scale, which measures the intensity of hurricanes. Right now, the scale stops at a Category 5, which is a storm that has sustained winds of 157 miles per hour or greater. But the authors of the study want that capped at 192 miles per hour. Anything stronger will become a Category 6. According to the study, between 1980 and 2021, there were 5 tropical cyclones worldwide that exceeded the hypothetical Category 6 threshold. Changing the Saffir-Simpson scale has been discussed for years. It only registers wind scale, and it does not include the impacts of storm surge and rain-induced flooding, which can be the most deadly and damaging impacts from these storms. And speaking of hurricane season, coming up next weekend on Weather Extra, meteorologist Sean Bellafiore is going to take a deeper dive on some of the changes the National Hurricane Center will be issuing for the upcoming hurricane season. You don't want to miss that. Well, that's all we have for you on this week's episode of Weather Extra. We'll see you right back here next weekend.